Act 3, Scene 1. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern report back to King Claudius and Queen Gertrude. They say that Hamlet has a crafty madness. Claudius tells Gertrude about the plan to have Ophelia talk to Hamlet while he and Laertes eavesdrop, and Gertrude hopes that love really is the reason that he's acting so strangely. She leaves and Polonius tells Ophelia to pretend to read a book, and then Polonius and Claudius hide themselves behind a tapestry. Hamlet, who is still racked with despair over his whole situation, comes in, and he thinks over whether it's better to live or to kill himself in this very famous speech. To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them. Ophelia runs into Hamlet, and she tries to give him back some tokens of his affection, as her father had told her to do. Hamlet tells Ophelia that he never really loved her, and he tells her to leave the castle and go to a convent. Get thee to a nunnery. Hamlet suspects that Ophelia has somehow been setting him up on behalf of Polonius and the king, and he becomes furious about this, and he feels betrayed. He also plays it up a little bit because he thinks that maybe Polonius is listening. So he gets really mad about women and their wiles. God has given you one face, and you make yourselves another. You jig, you amble, and you lisp, and you nickname God's creatures, and make your wantonness your ignorance. He's also over marriage. I say we will have no more marriages. Those that are married already, all but one shall live. The rest shall keep as they are. To a nunnery, go! So Hamlet storms off, and Ophelia breaks down crying to see how changed he is. Polonius and Claudius come out of their hiding spot, and Claudius is suspicious that Hamlet might not be as crazy as he seems. So in case he's planning something like a grab for the crown, Claudius decides to send Hamlet to England on an official errand to collect money that's owed to Denmark. Polonius thinks that that sounds like a good plan, but he also thinks that maybe love is still the problem, and that the Queen Gertrude should try to talk to her son and talk some sense into him. And Polonius volunteers to eavesdrop to what happens behind a tapestry. Act 3, Scene 2. Hamlet gives some instructions to the actors as they get ready for the play. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Suit the action to the word to the action, with this special observance, that you o'erstep not the modesty of nature, for anything so overdone is from the purpose of playing, whose end, both at the first and now, was and is, to hold as 'twere the mirror up to nature. Then Hamlet meets with Horatio and tells him to watch Claudius during the play, so he can be a witness to if he acts guilty. The whole court gathers to watch the play, and Hamlet acts especially crazy before and during the show, and is generally a pest to Ophelia because he really can't let her be. He makes comments about his mother and women's faithfulness in general, and is just annoying. Then the play starts with the king and queen having a conversation. The king is getting old and is talking to his wife about her marrying again when he dies. The queen says she never ever will, and Hamlet asks his mother what she thinks of the play. She says, "The lady doth protest too much, methinks." To which Hamlet's like, The play continues, and in it a murderer with a poison comes to kill the king. But Hamlet is so eager that he tells the rest of the plot of the play. He poisons him in the garden for his estate. You shall see anon how the murderer gets the love of Gonzago's wife. Claudius has seen enough, and is shaken by seeing art imitate life, so he gets up abruptly and leaves, ending everyone's night of fun. Hamlet checks with Horatio, and they both agree that Claudius seemed guilty. Then Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come to tell Hamlet that his mother wants to see him. Hamlet asks Guildenstern to play a pipe, and when Guildenstern says he can't, Hamlet says, "Why, look you now, how unworthy a thing you make of me. You would play upon me, you would seem to know my stops, you would pluck out the heart of my mystery, you would sound me from my lowest note to the top of my compass. Do you think I am easier to be played on than a pipe?" You see, Hamlet is upset that his friends have visited only to police him and to report back to his parents. Then Polonius also comes to tell Hamlet that his mother wants to see him, and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern skulk off. Alone, Hamlet prepares himself to see his mother. He needs to keep his promise to the ghost. "I will speak daggers to her, but use none." Act 3, Scene 3. Claudius tells Rosencrantz and Guildenstern that Hamlet is to go to England with them. After Hamlet's crazy behavior at the play, he really wants him gone now. When he's alone, King Claudius is troubled and he thinks about his crime of killing his brother, and he wonders if praying will help him to be forgiven. So he tries to pray, but he's not really sorry because he got to be the king and he's sleeping with his brother's wife. He got everything he wanted. Hamlet sees the king praying, and he decides to kill him right then and there. But then he realizes that if he kills Claudius while he's praying, Claudius' soul just might go to heaven, and Hamlet wants to make sure his soul goes to hell. So he decides instead to postpone killing his uncle, and instead to go visit his mother in her room. Act 3, Scene 4. In Queen Gertrude's room, Polonius tells Gertrude to give Hamlet a proper talking to, and then he hides himself behind the tapestry, because he never met a tapestry he didn't want to hide behind. Hamlet comes in furious and tells Gertrude she has offended his father. Gertrude's scared that Hamlet's come to kill her and starts yelling for help, so Polonius also starts yelling for help behind the tapestry. Hamlet calls him a rat and stabs him through the tapestry, and when he discovers it's Polonius that he's killed, he's like, well, that's what you get for being in everyone's business. Then he reads his mother the riot act, asking her if she's blind to go from the noble husband she had to Claudius. He accuses her of living in the rank sweat of an enseamed bed, stewed in corruption, honeying and making love over the nasty sty. Gertrude can't take all this, and she begs Hamlet to stop attacking her for what she's done. She tells him he's broken her heart. Then Hamlet sees the ghost asking him to help his mother. Gertrude can't see the ghost, so she sees Hamlet talking to the air as proof of his madness. But Hamlet tells her not to fool herself into thinking that madness is the reason he's saying all this stuff instead of her disgusting behavior. Then he softens. I must be cruel only to be kind. And tells her not to go to his uncle's bed anymore, but to find her virtue again, and also not to tell anyone about the conversation they just had. Gertrude promises that she won't. Hamlet reminds his mother that he has to go to England with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, who are carrying letters from the king, and he suspects some plots up, but he intends to get ahead of it. 'Tis a sport to have the engineer hoist with his own petard, and shall go hard, but I will delve 1 yard below their mines, and blow them at the moon. Then Hamlet leaves, dragging Polonius's body. Act 4, Scene 1. Claudius comes in and asks Gertrude where Hamlet is, and she tells him that Hamlet is crazy and has killed Polonius, so everyone searches for Hamlet. Act 4, Scene 2. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern find Hamlet, but he won't tell them where Polonius is. Act 4, Scene 3. Hamlet's brought to Claudius, who asks him where Polonius is, and Hamlet tells him he's at supper. Not where he eats, but where he is eaten. A certain convocation of politic worms are eaten at him. Claudius asks again where Polonius is, and Hamlet answers, in heaven, send hither to see. If your messenger find him not there, seek him in the other place yourself. But he does finally say where he left the body, and Claudius tells Hamlet that he's got to go to England right away for his own safety because of what he's just done. When everyone leaves, Claudius plots. The letters that he sent with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to deliver to England ask that England kills Hamlet when he arrives there. Act 4, Scene 4. Fortinbras is marching through to Poland with his soldiers. Hamlet and his traveling party meet them. Hamlet asks where they're going, and the captain tells him that they're going to fight over a patch of land that has absolutely no value but the name. Hamlet thinks that Poland won't defend it, but the captain says they definitely will. Hamlet thinks about all the people who will die over this useless piece of land, and he decides that if that can happen, he really has to get it together and kill Claudius. Act 4, Scene 5. A messenger comes to tell Gertrude and Horatio that Ophelia has gone crazy. For real. Ophelia is brought to the queen, and Claudius also arrives too, and Ophelia really is crazy. She's like, he is dead and gone. Alack and fie for shame. Young men will do't if they come to it. And then Ophelia wanders out, and everyone's left like... There's a lot of noise right outside, and a messenger announces that Laertes has come back from France angry, after hearing the rumor that his father is murdered, probably, and has overpowered everyone and has broken into the castle, and the people are behind him saying that Laertes should be king. Laertes arrives and confronts Claudius, who says that Polonius is dead, but that he didn't kill him. Laertes swears he'll take revenge for his father's death. Then Ophelia wanders back in. Oh, you must wear your rule with a difference. And everyone's like, oh no. And Laertes now also wants revenge for his sister being crazy. Claudius says that a group of people should be gathered to judge if he is at fault for Polonius' death. And if they find that he's to blame, Claudius will give Laertes his crown. Act 4, Scene 6. Later, in another room, Horatio gets a letter from a messenger about how pirates met Hamlet's ship at sea, and in the confusion of the attack, Hamlet jumped onto their boat, and the pirates helped him out and have brought him back to Denmark. It could happen. It seems totally legit. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are still on their way to England, and Hamlet wants Horatio to come meet him where he's hiding. Act 4, Scene 7. In another room, Claudius and Laertes have reconciled, but Laertes wants to know why Claudius didn't carry out punishment on Hamlet for killing Polonius, and the king says that he couldn't because the queen's love and the public's love for Hamlet is just too great. A messenger arrives with a letter for Claudius now, from Hamlet, saying that he's back in Denmark and he will return soon to the castle. So Claudius conspires with Laertes to kill Hamlet when he returns by setting up a sword fight, purely for sport, between Laertes and Hamlet, pretending it's a method of settling the score in a peaceful way. But Laertes will put poison on his sword that will kill Hamlet with a single scratch, and Claudius decides to also put poison in a drink so he can give it to him as a backup plan. Then, sadly, Queen Gertrude comes in and tells everybody that Ophelia has drowned. Act 5, Scene 1. At a churchyard near the castle, a gravedigger discusses the fact that Ophelia drowned herself with another gravedigger. Gravedigger is digging up old bones as he makes a new grave. Hamlet and Horatio arrive at the graveyard and overhear the conversation, and Hamlet is amazed at how casually the gravediggers are throwing around the bones that used to be people. Hamlet decides to speak to the gravedigger, who makes a bunch of jokes and doesn't really know who he's talking to, so he also makes a bunch of comments about Hamlet. Then the gravedigger recognizes one of the skulls as belonging to Yorick, the king's jester, who died a long time ago. Hamlet holds the skull and says, "Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him, Horatio. A fellow of infinite jest, of most excellent fancy. He hath borne me on his back 1,000 times. Where be your jibes now? Your gambols, your songs, your flashes of merriment that were wont to set the table on a roar." People are coming, so Hamlet and Horatio hide to watch the funeral procession. Claudius, Gertrude, and Laertes arrive. Laertes wants to know what ceremony will be done for her sister, and the priest says that there's not going to be any because Ophelia's death was likely a suicide. Hamlet realizes the gravedigger was making Ophelia's grave, and Laertes is so filled with grief that he jumps into the grave because he can't let Ophelia go yet, and he rails against Hamlet for doing this to her, basically. So Hamlet comes out of hiding and faces Laertes. He says that he loved Ophelia too, and he says that he has grief as great as Laertes's. Then Hamlet goes on to the castle, and Claudius tells Laertes to be patient. Act 5, Scene 2. Later in a great hall at the castle, Hamlet tells Horatio that he found the letter that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern were carrying, and it said that England was to cut off Hamlet's head. But Hamlet switched the letter out for one that he forged, saying that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern should be put to death immediately. This he sees as payback for their betrayal. Hamlet tells Horatio that he also intends to kill his uncle Claudius for everything that he's done. Then a man comes to tell Hamlet that Claudius has made a bet on a sword fight between Hamlet and Laertes. Hamlet agrees to the sword fight, and the messenger leaves. Horatio thinks that Hamlet will lose the bet since Laertes is known to be an excellent swordsman, but Hamlet has been practicing a lot, so he's not so sure. Horatio tells Hamlet that if he suspects that anything is wrong, if it's more of a deadly fight instead of just a fight for sport, that he should let him know, but Hamlet says that he's okay with whatever happens. If it be not now, yet it will come. The readiness is all. Then everyone enters the hall for the sword fight. Hamlet apologizes to Laertes before the fight for killing Polonius and for its effect on Ophelia, and he blames his madness. Laertes says he's satisfied with the apology, but he still needs to have the sword fight to defend his honor. They will fight for 3 points. The sword fight starts, and Hamlet gets the first point. A hit! A very palpable hit. Then Claudius puts a pearl in a cup as a reward for Hamlet for doing so well. The pearl has poison on it, and he offers the drink to Hamlet, but Hamlet says he'll drink after a little more fighting. Hamlet gets the second hit too, and Gertrude says she'll drink to his fortune and takes Hamlet's cup. Claudius calls out to Gertrude and says, "Don't drink from that cup," but she says she will, and she does, and Claudius can't believe it. She just drank the poison. Laertes tells Claudius he'll get Hamlet with his sword in the next round, but at this point, Claudius doubts it. Hamlet and Laertes fight some more, but no one scores any points in that round, so when they're catching their breath, Laertes slashes Hamlet with the tip of his poisoned sword. Angry, Hamlet starts fighting Laertes for real, and in the scuffle, Hamlet gets Laertes' sword and cuts him with it. Just then, the poison takes its effect on Gertrude, and she collapses. Claudius tries to cover by saying that she's fainting at the sight of the blood, but Gertrude knows better. "Oh, my dear Hamlet, the drink, I am poisoned!" Then Gertrude dies, and Hamlet orders the doors be locked so that they can find out who has committed this act of treachery. But Laertes confesses, and he says that the blade that he has was poisoned, and that Hamlet and he are both going to die after having been stabbed with that blade. And then he says that the king is to blame. So Hamlet finally stabs Claudius with a poisoned blade, and then, for good measure, he makes him drink from the poisoned cup. And King Claudius dies. Laertes asks for Hamlet's forgiveness, and he forgives Hamlet for Polonius' death. Then Laertes dies. As Hamlet lays dying, Horatio is such a loyal friend that he wants to drink from the rest of the poison and die too, but Hamlet tells Horatio to live so that he can tell everyone the truth of what's happened. There's a noise of gunfire, and someone explains that Fortinbras has come to the castle after being victorious at the battle in Poland to celebrate. The ambassador of England has also just arrived, but Hamlet can't hold on any longer, and as he dies he says, "The rest is silence." Then Horatio says goodbye. "Good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rest." Just then, Fortinbras and the English ambassador enter the hall and see Hamlet, Laertes, Claudius, and Gertrude all dead. Horatio says he'll explain the sad story to them, and the English ambassador delivers the news that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, as Hamlet had ordered. And Fortinbras decides that he will put himself up for the throne of Denmark since no one is left, and he orders all the dead bodies to be carried off to burial, and that the guns salute the dead Prince Hamlet. The end. On the next episode, I'll be discussing the play. Feel free to subscribe to this channel or follow me on YouTube. Information is in the description below, along with a link to a version of the play you can read online.